Hello Internet, and welcome to my live reaction for Choujin X Chapter 8. When we last left our heroes, Tokio had reached full beastification and tried to do some damage to Nari. He failed. He tried to punch her and it just kind of hurt his own arm. He tried to run away with Ellie, but Ellie was like, "You're injured at this point. If we run away, we'll just get caught. We have to fight her." And so Tokio comes up with this plan to force Nari's mouth open and have Ellie shoot her smoke in it to broil her from the inside, which would have worked. But Ellie also does not have great control over her powers yet, and only lets out a puff of smoke. All hope seems lost, and then this Choujin, allied with Hoshi Sandak, appears with these giant blades and just cuts into Nari. He's real edgy about it. And brings her in for questioning and brings Tokio to his base, where he meets Hoshi. We learn the base is called Yamato Mori. They're a kind of training ground for good Choujin. They give me kind of Anteku vibes, but with a bit more government standing, I think. But yeah, that's where we left off, with Tokio kind of starting his induction into Yamato Mori. But instead we open somewhere else. Tokio! And is back in the Kurohara household. His sister, whose name I don't think we've learned yet, comes down to the dining room. "What's all this about you being a key witness for a secret agent?" And Tokyo's kind of confused there. You have to go in the moment they call you, right? Someone got in touch telling me you're a witness." And Tokio looks at her, "I am?" I'm guessing this is something Hoshi has done to maybe give Tokio an excuse for why he's been out of school the past few days. I don't quite know. But there's a bit about secret agent. Are the Choujin protectors kind of secret agents? I don't really know. Again, like I've been saying for the past several videos, there's a whole lot about this world we just don't know. But anyway, sister goes on, "This after you didn't come home all night. I had to go to the police, you know. It was a nightmare. What about school? Are you going?" And then he does go to school for the first time in days. "Kurohara," this is the teacher. Excuse me. "So you're a key witness for a secret agent?" And Tokio shoots up, "I am." There's a distinct parallel between that "I am" and the first page's "I am." Here he's just he's aware of the lie, and he's just gonna roll with it at this point. Azuma looks at him though. They don't seem to have reconciled after what happened back in chapter 3, I think. But the teacher just goes on, "Alright, time to start class. Kurohara, what are the answers to the problems on page 61? And Tokio, very honest, "I don't have a clue." Then later that day, we see, I'm guessing this is Azuma and Tokio on the roof. Azuma messing with the radio to do that whole Defenders thing they did back in the pilot. "So you're a secret agent's key witness?" And Tokio tells him, "Seems like it. They must be covering for me, so I don't have to explain anything to my family or the school." And Azuma kind of chimes in, "Yamato Mori, an organization for Choujin by Choujin." So also they have seemingly reconciled here. Or maybe Tokio feels because he learned to turn back to his human form without Azuma, he's worthy of talking to Azuma again, which is very mentally unhealthy, but that's kind of who he is at this point. Either way, I had a thought. I forgot what that thought was. There's still Azuma's Choujin power is still sort of hidden, and for some reason his mentioning of Yamato Mori kind of makes me think of that. I don't know. We'll see how that... We'll still have to wait and see how Azuma's Choujin power develops. Either way, Tokio asks, "You've heard of them, Azuma?" And we see there's this thing on the radio, rising picture of the Koshien, the era when kids can dream is over. Koshien is the baseball stadium where the national high school championship is played. Comes up in anime a good bit. I don't quite know how that's connected to the era when kids can dream is over. That might just be random filler noise, but it might also be somewhat important, so just keep a pin in that. "You've heard of them, Azuma?" Tokio asks, "From the news and in the papers. They crack down on Choujin who misuse their powers. They're a group of good Choujin. Sometimes they show up on TV." Which I think kind of ties into Tokio's fears that if people know that he's a Choujin, he won't be able to live a normal life. But the members of Yamato Mori, maybe they... that doesn't quite answer if they go on TV with their true identity, Or they have, like, code names based on their powers, kind of like a hero society. I don't know. Either way, Tokyo kind of thinks, I don't really watch TV. But Ozma sits down next to him, Tokyo, and he bows his head. I'm sorry. Here we go. Here's the reconciliation for the last incident. And Tokyo looks at him, huh? What's gotten into you all of a sudden? And Ozma tells him, I yelled at you and didn't help you when you were in trouble. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. And Tokyo kind of tells him, it's okay. And I think you were right, Ozma. I do always lean on you. Thanks to what you said, I decided to step up for once. And there were a ton of and you realize he can't say pigeons. I mean people to help me. I mean, I think Tokyo maybe could get away with saying pigeons. You just have to kind of explain that he has a power that lets him talk to pigeons, which is so cool. Just want to say, I love that fucking power for him. Anyway, Ozma then, he has this bit, his glasses are reflected, which maybe this is just the, like, anime watcher in me. That's a little suspicious, right? It's like the Log Horizon thing, when they push the glasses up and then, like, gleam all evil-like. Okay. So what are you going to do now? And Tokyo tells him, I'm going to Yamato Mori for a while. Apparently I need a registration card thingy. Supposedly it's a huge pain. I'm glad they're not, like, there's no actual damages to Tokyo for not knowing about the card. You know, I'm glad it's just like, you need the card, go get it, but, like, you're fine because you didn't know. I'm glad that's sort of hand-waved like that. Anyway, Ozma goes on, wow. And then we see Ozma looks down, they've been on the roof this whole time, and he sees someone scoring a goal in a game of soccer. And then we see on the radio, the last bit of the page, now let us be grateful for the grace of God and together offer our prayers. Okay, that's a weird thing. And I admit, my knowledge of Japanese religious makeup is not strong. But generally, you wouldn't just refer to, like, a deity, like a traditional Japanese deity as God alone, right? You might say the gods or a god. And I don't think Buddhism particularly mentions God as, like, a name in that way, though I may be way off base there. If I am, please feel free to correct me in the comments. So I'm curious what's going on. Like, is there some specific religion that has been built up in this world to, like, go with the rise of Choujins? Is it somehow Christianity has sort of eked its way into mainstream Japan in this world? I don't know. But we leave it there. We cut to Tokyo on a bus, Chapter 8, My Benefit. And then he comes to Yamato Mori, and we see Ellie and a girl who might be Momoma, I think was the name that Ellie and Edgelord mentioned at the end of the Nari fight. And then we see Edgelord himself in his hat. Yamato Mori, guard, age 17. Simon Kagomura is our edgy friend, our blade man. The woman is another guard, a third year at Konpei High, age 18, Maiko Momoma. I'm going to try to call her Maiko because Momoma is the kind of thing I have to, like, prep myself to say every time I say it. And then we see this little tiny panel in the corner. I talked about this a little bit, I think, but I love Ishida's use of paneling in this series. It just gets such a laugh out of me. This tiny little corner panel, we see Ellie literally intruding on Maiko's space. Farmer boarding for free at Yamato Mori, Ellie Otata. Gives this weak little wave to Tokyo, who they still think is named, like, Zavin, I think, unless he corrected them. Anyway, Simon tells them, Otata and Kurohara, you will both take a 40-day course on Choujin, after which you will take a brief test. Only then will your registration cards be issued. You'll have an interview with Instructor Sandak today. And then, I think this is, this is Tokyo's line. I thought that might be Momoma, because we see Momoma turn back to them as Simon says that. But I think this is Tokyo. Says, so Miss Ellie, are you? And Ellie stops him. Just Ellie is fine. Tokyo is so polite, by the way. The fact that he's calling this, like, girl who's probably, like, 6 or 7 years younger than him Miss is so sweet. I love him. But anyway, Ellie cuts him off. Just Ellie is fine. And Tokyo tells her, then you can call me Tokyo. Tokyo? Isn't your name Zavin? And Tokyo's real confused there. Zavin? And then Tokyo looks at her, are you taking the course too? Yeah, I don't know a lick about Choujin. I just got to Yamato Mori 12 days ago. And that kind of shocks Tokio. What? I came in from Gaga, but then this baddie attacked me. So I'm staying at Yamato Mori right now. And it's kind of obvious she's very much a novice in all this, given that, like, when she tried to attack Nari, like, nothing happened. That's very clearly a sign that she's very much weak at this kind of thing. But Tokio asks, so then you tried saving me even though you only just turned into a Choujin? And Maiko looks back at them. Ellie suddenly sprinted off toward the zoo. She really took me by surprise. And Tokio is still kind of in awe of just the intense selflessness of Ellie. She hasn't had any training, but still got around like she did. Oh no, it's more about her physical talents. Which might just be, you know, she grew up on the farm, and Tokio's like a good old city boy. But he looks at her, this girl's ridiculous. Then Tokio asks them, once I get a registration card, will I be an agent thingy like you guys, Mr. Kagamura? And Simon looks at him, you? You mean you said that you'd like a job that requires you to take a stroll into the brains of homicidal lunatics in the unhinged? Is that what you want? And Tokio, not quite realizing he's the protagonist of an action manga, kind of freezes, no. And Simon tells him the two of you will receive a Class B registration, commonly known as a general registration. Class A registration permits permits the carrier to use Choujin abilities for research purposes and for social development or the betterment of society. We at Yamato Mori have many Class A registrants. Class B registration only permits the use of Choujin abilities in unavoidable situations. Unregistered Choujin are not allowed to use their powers at all. Well, I mean, they were allowed to if they, like Tokio and Ellie got away with it back during the Nari fight. With the Class B registration, you two are only allowed to use your powers to protect yourselves and others, and on accident. And Tokio and Ellie are just kind of almost insulted, maybe, on accident? And we see a plume of smoke kind of rise from Ellie's head, literally appearing on accident. And Maiko tells them, so basically, it means that when you try to help someone, or accidentally use your powers, you're A-okay. That's the registration card you two are going to get. And the two of them look at her, I see. And Ellie presses, do powers really come out by accident? And Maiko tells them, Choujin powers are influenced by emotion. When you're really mad or feeling down, sometimes your powers will come out on their own. Wow. That does kind of, for some reason, it draws me back to what Ozma theorized back in chapter, I think, 3. That, you know, the forms people take as Choujin is related to their personality. Like, Tokio became a vulture because of that whole self-image thing, where the kids referred to him as a vulture picking off of Ozma's scraps. Ellie's a little different because, you know, she got her powers from Hume. But either way, Ellie thinks, all this registration and emotion stuff kind of seems like it's inconvenient being a Choujin. And Simon calls back, exactly right. Being a Choujin is inconvenient by nature. And Maiko kind of counters, oh, come on, Simon, it's not always like that. Helping others can be gratifying. Tokio kind of reads them, Kagamura is scary, but Momoma acts like a kind older sister. I could dig that. How is he using the word dig there? Because, maybe he's just reading Cuckoo, or anything, or too much types of anime, but something about that makes me, the fact that, like, Tokio has an older sister, the potential of digging that being kind of a romantic sexual thing, I don't know if I'm really vibing with that one. But that's looking too deep into it, maybe. Anyway, Michael looks, oh, this tree must have been blown over in the hurricane earlier. And Simon looks at her, Momoma, how about you vent some emotions? Oh, she's like a wind Choujin, ain't she? What? Me? You'd be helping others. And Maiko kind of closes her eyes. Ellie, Tokio, close your eyes. And she just, not wind power apparently, she just lifts that tree, like super strength or something. We hear a crash. Tokio's kind of like peeking through. You can open them. And Ellie is shocked. Whoa, the tree's done been cleared. So let's get going. And Tokio, who I'm assuming saw all of, oh yeah, because we see looking at that earlier panel of her, I'm kind of curious if Tokio was like, if Maiko was behind Tokio and Tokio opened his eyes. But looking at the panel where we see Maiko with the tree, we see these two lines, like fingers covering Tokio's eyes. Nice bit of framing there, I will say. And Tokio thinks, guess she's a Choujin with super strength. And then we come to what looks like a headquarters or something. Right, they were going to an interview with Sandak, right? And we see, Tokyo and Ellie both kind of kneeling on the floor. It's this very kind of traditional Japanese-looking structure. And we see it is Hoshi. There's a sign behind him, self-control is strength. It's all very kind of traditional. And Hoshi asks them, I have a question for the two of you. What do you consider to be good? And the two of them asks, good? And Tokyo answers, helping others who were in trouble? What a corny question. And Ellie answers, to live comfortably, which is a very distinct difference between the two of them. For Tokyo, the goal is selflessness. Perhaps, going back to what Kaneki could be in like early Ghoul, to the point of self-harm, right? That was kind of a recurring theme that Kaneki's mom's, deep need to help her sister, even before we kind of got more details in Kaneki's backstory, was really harmful to Kaneki, and was because that she had no sense of like self-will or anything. So we might be seeing that again with Tokyo. Ellie, however, is almost like selfish about it. What's good is to live comfortably, which is an interesting kind of distinction between them. Hoshi then presses, then what is evil? And Tokyo asks, making trouble for others, which is just the opposite of what he said. And Ellie goes all the way to murder, which is like, there's a wide gap in evil things before you get to murder. And Maiko looks at her, she just said murder. And Simon shuts her up. Keep quiet while he's asking questions. Hoshi continues, and who are your allies? Tokyo, I guess my buddy from childhood. And then Ellie says, my grandpappy and farmer friends. It's very, very insular. They're not really opening themselves up to Yamato Mori, which makes sense if they don't want to be like guards of Yamato Mori. But it's an interesting thing to look at. This feels very much like a whole scene just to like getting their characters completely set in stone. So I'm really paying attention to this. And so Hoshi continues, now, who are your enemies? And that freezes the two of them. Enemies? And he flashes back to Nari. Is she an enemy? But he doesn't say anything. Ellie then speaks. First person who comes to mind is the Smoke Man. Of course, referring to Hume, but Tokyo has not met Hume, so he has this image of a puff of smoke with a face on it. The Smoke Man? And Hoshi kind of lets that go. Now, this last question is the most important. And Tokyo kind of gets ready for it. The most important question. What could that be? How do you hope to benefit from your lives? Okay, that's an interesting thing. It's an interesting thing to make the most important question. How do you hope to benefit from your lives? It's very kind of self-looking. It's not how do you hope to benefit others, it's how do you hope to benefit. And I honestly don't even know how to answer that question, right? Like, you benefit by being alive, by having things happen. And Tokyo's kind of confused. Benefit? That's the most important question? Benefit? What could that be? Like, I hope to become rich? But that doesn't seem right. Maybe I hope everyone says good things about me. So it's kind of like the question that Tokyo is translating it as what do you hope happens in your life? What good things do you hope happen? But I'm not quite sure that's what Hoshi's asking. Either way, Ellie just comes right out and says, money. And Simon and Maiko sort of listen interestedly. Tokyo was like, did she really just say that? Hoshi goes on, and why is that? Most of my dreams will come true with money. I mean, I guess she just wants to, like, help her... Well, because what was her dream exactly? Was it to, like, help her grandfather live comfortably? Like, I'm kind of thinking of Uraraka in MHA. How, she first reveals at the start of Season 2 she wants to be a hero for the money. And everyone's like, that's weirdly selfish for you. Before she's like, oh no, it's because my parents were poor and I wanted to support them. Maybe that's what's going on? Hoshi presses most of them? Yeah. And she blushes, going back to her dream of marrying someone who looks just like Hoshi. Yeah, most of them. And Tokyo looks back at her. Money, huh? I'm impressed you can just go and say that. And then Hoshi turns to Tokyo. And you, Kurohara? And we see Ellie, turns to him and, stares right at him. Her eyes are burning into me. My benefit. Ugh, I'm really feeling her stare. And then he freezes. Huh? What would be to my benefit? So it's actually... I commented earlier about Tokio's selflessness, comparing that to Kaneki, right? Specifically, like the Rize Kaneki scene before the light hair, yada yada yada. But it's kind of it is a distinctly selfish question. You know, how do you hope to benefit? And we see him go on. What would be to my benefit? Something that would help Azuma, but isn't that just to Azuma's benefit? We see, you know, Tokio's always kind of viewed Azuma as the important one. And what Hoshi's question is like forcing him to think selfishly for not the first time, but a very low number of times. What would be my benefit? And Hoshi kind of acknowledges that Tokio's struggling to answer and asks, then how about I rephrase the question slightly? Do you have a dream? And Tokio looks at him, a dream? And he continues to think, thinking about everyone in the room, helping Azuma? Being his support? Is that my dream? Saving people? Being an ally of justice? That all seems super... Wait. And he doesn't even say anything. We cut to night. Maybe he said something, but we don't get to see what it is yet. Because he seems to have had some kind of revelation with that wait. Even though all of his dreams are kind of, you know, selfless. Saving people, being an ally of justice, helping Azuma, being his support, that's all very outward looking. You know, Ellie, at least on the surface, like, her dream is to have money and to have a hot husband, and that's kind of it for her. Which, like, she's a child, I'm not gonna, like, blame her for that or anything, but it's very selfish. Whereas Azuma here is struggling with just being selfish. But anyway, we're now at the bus stop that night. And Ellie kind of runs up to Tokio, because Ellie's living there. She's not going home. But Tokio's going to get the bus home. Hey, so why didn't you answer him about your dream? And Tokio just looks at her and then answers, couldn't think of one. And Ellie just looks at him. You haven't got any? I guess not. And Ellie just kind of blank-faced asks, then what's the point of living? And Tokio sort of stares at her for a sec, and then kind of gets embarrassed. Huh? Did she just say something downright awful to me? I mean, yeah, kinda. Have I gotta have a dream to live? No, you don't. I'm just curious is all. So yeah, there seems to be a distinct distinction between Ellie and Tokio. Ellie is fine being selfish. I think. I mean, maybe, you know, the money is for the farm or whatever, but she's okay just saying, yeah, I want money, I want a good-looking husband, I want a mansion, I want to have a nice life, I want to live comfortably. You know, the only thing she considers bad is, like, downright murder. Whereas Tokio, you know, his answers to the earlier questions are, it's good to help people, it's bad to make trouble for people. It's all very sort of, the thing you do is don't bother people. And you help them when they are bothered. It's selfless, it's, you know, a good thing to be. But I'm kind of curious, I'm trying to figure out where, because, like, Isha is setting up these two characters, with Tokio and Ellie, who are both sort of share the protagonist role, and are both such stark contrasts. You know, Ellie is selfish sounds mean, but, like, she's accepted that she has desires, and Tokio is not that. And, you know, I'm thinking back to Kaneki in part 1 of Ghoul. I don't know, there's a lot of thoughts kind of all bouncing around in my mind with Tokio and Ellie. And I'm curious if I'll have them, like, straight by the end of this chapter. No, you don't. I'm just curious is all. And Tokio looks up. I don't really know. Then why do you want money? And Ellie just sort of answers, I already said earlier. Then why do you want things you can buy with money? Because it'll make life easier and more fun. So she's getting, like, it seems less and less an altruistic thing from Ellie. It's increasingly sort of self-interested. And not really in a bad way, not in a malicious way. It just kind of is. Which, again, sets them up on that stark dichotomy. Everything Tokio could imagine for his dream is selfless in nature. And I'm not quite sure if we're supposed to think that's good or bad. I'm repeating myself at this point, but I think it bears repeating. Ellie sort of brings the conversation back around. But we're talking about you, not me. And Tokio's kind of frustrated. He still has to kind of deal with this. And he looks at her. I haven't got any dreams. What's wrong with that? And he turns away. And Ellie stares for a second and calls back, you sure? And Tokio's increasingly frustrated. She's so persistent. And then he gets back on the bus. Or he gets on the bus. The bus has arrived. He's coming home. He looks out the window. He sees Ellie going back to wherever she's staying. Oh, she came all the way to the bus stop just to ask me that? That might be honestly kind of countering Ellie as this more selfish figure. Maybe. That she went out here to kind of, maybe with the intention of helping Tokio. Not quite sure it worked, but that might have been her idea. Anyway, Tokio continues, dreams, huh? And then we see a reporter about the fight in the zoo. At present, the city is racing to deal with the escaped animals. With the assistance of a private Choujin organization, half have been recovered. However, some invaluable specimens, such as the tiger and vulture, are still... There is still a question. Like, the zoo was closed. You know, why are they... Like, what are they doing with the animals there? I don't know. Still weird. But then we see this old man in a crowd. And he, I think, brings a phone up to his ear. And then we cut to a completely different scene. This, like, Cthulhu-looking motherfucker with, like, 4 eyes and, like, mouth tentacles. And this woman in, like, a face mask. And the man says, now we're stuck cleaning up after that snake chick. Think you can handle the follow-up, Ume? And I guess Ume is her name. And she pulls something out of her, like, wallet or purse or something. And it's all these little paper cutout dogs. And she places one of them on the ground. And they all kind of come to life. It will take some time, but I believe so. And Cthulhu tells her, guess we can take it easy while we wait. Fancy a trip to the sauna? You'll be a boiled octopus. And then Tokio goes to his sister. Sister, you got any dreams? To marry! Into money! That's a vibe. To be continued. Okay. So the big question here, the big point of this chapter is, of course, that interview scene. We get a little bit more world building, first thing. Very sort of, very expository world building, you know. It's the point where Simon sits them down and it's like, okay, it's been 8 chapters. It's time we tell you a little bit of how this world works. Describing the registration system, describing the, like, class they'll have to take, all of the setup of this registration card kind of thing. It's all very kind of expository. We also have this bit of Tokio and Ozma kind of reconciling as Ozma apologizes. There's not much of a fallout because Tokio thinks he kind of deserved it, so he's not really going to call Ozma out. I'm curious if we're going to see more of that. I don't know. All of a sudden, I want to pair that scene with all of the Tokio and Ellie contrasting we've been doing. Right? Tokio cannot find in himself to blame Ozma for anything because he has, you know, very little sense of self-worth outside of Ozma. Which, pairing that together with this sort of interview scene, I'm increasingly seeing it as more of a negative thing. Ishida is not trying to provide a balance to Kaneki in this whole intense selflessness can be bad for you, you know. It's sort of the same concept. Just, you know, radically different situations. I think there are a lot of differences between... I'm not saying that Ghoul and Choujin are the same story, because they are obviously radically different, both in tone and setup. But that same theme of intense selflessness can be bad in the end is still there. I hope, given how early this is being brought up, I imagine it's not going to go quite as poorly for Tokio as it went for Kaneki. I would argue the series is far less a tragedy than Ghoul was. But that same idea of you have to actually have desires, I think is really important to where Tokio's arc is going. You know, he doesn't call out Ozma for being kind of a dick to him, but I think maybe he should. And Ozma thinks that he should. And I think that might be eventually where this narrative is all leading us to. That eventually he'll have to, like, have some bit of selfishness. It's not awful to, like, have boundaries and desires. That's where I think this is all going. And Ellie is kind of a figure he can almost aspire to be. So maybe not quite. It's just like, I'm doing this because I want to have a happy life. Like both Ellie and the sister, who we learn at the end just wants to marry into money. And I doubt that's like her true deep-seated dream. It's just the thing she shouts out. Not terribly well thought out. But I think that sort of is the point, is that Tokyo's selflessness has left him kind of aimless. He doesn't know what he wants, he doesn't really know what he's doing, he doesn't have any goals, you know? He's just sort of, he accidentally became a Choujin, and now he's accidentally kind of working his way through being a Choujin and learning about being Choujins, and he just doesn't know what he's doing, and he has to have a dream at some point. Why, you know, the question that's rearranged to do you have a dream is Hoshi's most important question. I think the point is that Tokyo needs to find a desire, even if that desire is somewhat selfish. I think that's it. We don't quite have, like, it's the same sort of no, I'm not gonna bring that up. I was trying to maybe compare it to my ponderings on To Your Eternity and Fushi, but there's not enough of a connection there to make that meaningful. Either way, that's largely where this is going. This chapter is largely a character contrast with Tokyo and Ellie, but there's a bit more setup of the masked man, of who I'm assuming are like cleaners for the masked man's organization. This Cthulhu guy and Ume, the like origami spawner or something. I'm not quite sure what her power is supposed to be. It's unique. That's one of the things I really like about Choujin over Ghoul, is that Ghoul powers very quickly became very samey, and also very hard to make visually interesting with Ishida's art style. But here, there's a lot of fun. These paper dogs look like they could be fun. I don't know. We'll see all of that whenever Chapter 9 comes out. Again, there's really no telling when new chapters come out in this series. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff here. We're really, really early digging into this character stuff, which I'm always a fan of. I think characters sort of make a story in more than anything else. So yeah, there's a lot of fun here, a lot of interesting shit to like really dig your teeth into, and I want to know where this all goes. How Tokyo will develop into a more fulfilled human being, or super being. So yeah, I'm going to leave this video off here. Hope you all enjoyed the chapter and the video itself. If you did, feel free to drop me a like or subscribe, you know, do whatever makes you happy, you know? And remember, your life is your own, okay? Bye!